Paul One South Palm 1083. Preble by Willow. How we doing?
Good, you?
Drove a little fast out of that lot, don't you think?
I know.
What's going on?
A little scared.
Why?
That's all. I don't know.
All right, turn around.
Yep.
You're going to be under arrest for OUI.
The alcohol was a major problem, but the pot was even more of a problem. I've had many near-death experiences between my mental health and me in active use, leaving a buddy's house blacked out, don't even remember even getting in my car, driving down back roads going 83 miles an hour, don't know what roads I was on, I wasn't buckled in, I went off the road, hit a telephone pole and got back on the road and kept going, and somehow I found myself at my high school. So I was 13 when I first started smoking weed. I was in 8th grade, and all of my friends have older siblings that are all in high school, partying, doing this and that. So I would go over to their house and their older siblings would be like, hey, do you guys want to come to a party with us? And of course we're gonna be like, yeah, the older kids, they're cool. Let's go hang out with them. So we would go hang out with them, and that's when I'm seeing all the drinks go around and the blunts getting passed and bongs getting handed around. And they're offering us if we want to try. And of course I'm gonna say, yeah, I want to be known as the cool 8th grader that's doing this stuff with high schoolers. So I tried smoking weed. And right after that first hit, I was just like, this is my thing. This was created for me. I need this in my life.
I realized at 16, when he got his first arrest for medical marijuana, that he needed help, that he was turning into an addict, just like so many people that my life has been surrounded by.
It doesn't matter like how old you are, 16, 17, 18, under 21. Just nowadays you have so many resources to go get it for you. Either friends that are actually over the age of 21, friends that are 18 that just got their med card so they're legal. Like, it doesn't matter. We're all in active addiction.
So a lot of what I talk to parents about is there's a dose-dependent relationship related to the risks of marijuana in particular. So that means the earlier you start using, the more often you use it, the higher potency you use it, and the longer you use it, I'll increase your risk.
So what we know from oral use is that the amount and potency has gone up quite a lot and exponentially. So high dose is the rule. High dose has become the norm. And that just magnifies the problem, because this is not the 1970s when it was getting high after school. This is high dose, 30, 50, 100 milligrams of pure THC in orals. In vaping, you're getting pure, concentrated THC. And then there are dabs, which is distillate THC. That's often added to marijuana and smoked or vaped. So these are essentially pure doses of tetrahydrocannabinol that has profound effects in the parts of the brain, the frontal lobe, the parts that develop thinking, that need the time to develop. And it takes till age 25 for those parts of the brain to develop. And interestingly, it's those parts of the brain that are rich in receptors for cannabis, cannabinoid receptors.
I would just take one bong rip and I'd be high, and I'm seeing everyone else taking like 6 and 7, so I'm like, all right, it's time to get my tolerance up. So I would always be testing my limits with trying to bring it up, trying to show everyone else I can smoke how they do. And then that got me to the point where I'd be greening out, not knowing where I am, driving home greening out, throwing up, pulling over on the side of the road, trying to get some fresh air, all my windows down, sunroof open, swerving in between the lines, like not knowing where I was or what road I was going on.
You know, these days you can get 18%, 25%, 60%, 90% potency of THC in marijuana. And so it is really not the same plant. It has been chemically concentrated so that you're really getting a very intense high. I mean, I've seen the argument that people have thought, oh, well, if it's intense, that means that people are going to use less often. I mean, that's not my experience. When I talk to kids, they're using, every day, twice a day. Some kids are smoking all day long.
So I have some examples of the dab pens and the vape pens that we've confiscated at school over the years. And so, I know that some of you are familiar with them, but some of you might not be. And this was one of the cartridges one of my custodians found in the girls' restroom, and she thought I, was interesting. And on the back of this, it says Purple Rain Indica, but the total THC in this is 82.73%. Yeah. So what Laura Stack in her video was discussing is, marijuana in the 80s and 90s was anywhere from 2 to 5%, 2 to 5% THC. And then right around the turn of the century, genetic engineering, people, she called it the botanist, we started hybridizing, highly concentrating the marijuana to be now it's about 18 to 25% in the flower. So the flower stuff would be like the skunky smelling stuff that people would need a joint or a bowl or a blunt for. But if you're smoking, or if some people are smoking out of the vape pens or the dab pens, this oil here, that comes in these cartridges like that, most people aren't using 20% in here. It's 45, 50, 55, 60, 82. It can go up to as high as we've seen is about 95% THC. And I think we're, as a society, we're not doing a strong enough job of educating our young people, educating our parents on how different these devices are and what these devices use as their substance. The concentration of cannabis is just out of control. And the higher the dose, the higher the concentration of the THC, the more likely we are seeing the drug-induced psychosis and the diagnoses of illnesses like schizophrenia.
Studies have shown that 1 in 6 kids who start marijuana use before age 18 become addicted, and for daily users, the risk of addiction rises to 50%.
Marijuana, can certainly make people feel like they can't live without it, that they don't feel, I hear a lot of people tell me they don't feel normal if they're not high. And so that feeling that people have is what really drives a lot of the addiction that's hard to manage. And that in some ways is actually harder to deal with than the physical addiction.
The only way I would eat food is if I smoked weed and I felt high, because then I could be like, oh, I can eat anything. Like, I'm so hungry right now, I can eat whatever. But when I didn't smoke or I was out of weed, I freaked out. I was like, I can't eat right now. I'm not high. I can't eat.
So it became this series of me trying to figure out how to breathe, me trying to figure out how to help him. He'd lost 35 pounds. He wasn't eating. I was trying to help him cut back on the marijuana, said he was only using it occasionally, but then he wasn't eating, so he was losing weight. So you're watching your child become thinner and thinner, fading away to nothing, and couldn't sleep, couldn't wake up, he needed something every day to wake, to sleep, to eat, to function.
Whether marijuana or not is a gateway drug, I think that you have to think about the line in the sand that you draw when you start doing things to alter your reality. So, marijuana is very common. It's very accessible. And so I think that once you've taken that step to alter your reality, that makes it easier for you to go on to alter it in another way. I think there are plenty of people that smoke marijuana that don't go on to do other substances, but then there's going to be a subset that said, well, I did that. That seemed okay. And then somebody will offer them something different and they'll try that. So I think that the question is that once you have changed your viewpoint on what's acceptable and what's an experiment, that just makes you more open to try other things.
In 10 years, if I was still in active use, not making changes in my life like I am right now, I think I would be doing way harder drugs, not having money, not having a steady job, isolating. I probably would already be dead. I probably would have either died from overusing or I would have killed myself.
So we have the data showing it is harmful for the brain because the brain is the target organ in the world of cannabis. I mean, alcohol, it's the liver, tobacco, it's the lung, and marijuana, the brain is the target organ.
And what we do know, and know really, really well, is that people who are young, whose brains haven't fully developed, are at real risk to the downsides and risks of cannabis. And that includes, on average, an 8-point reduction in intelligence quotient, IQ.
So we are halfway through our first semester this fall at USM, and we are seeing a tsunami of students with mental health crises, ranging from anxiety and depression to suicidal ideation and an increase in cannabis use. So one of the other things that we're seeing really over the last 2 years is this group of students, smaller group of students who are showing signs of what we call cannabis-induced psychosis. So these are students that are having problems with paranoia. They're having problems with reality testing. They're describing kind of bizarre behaviors that they engage in. It's just, it's incredible. It's so worrisome that there's such a cavalier attitude that it's so helpful with everything without understanding its long-term impact and how it affects a growing and a maturing brain.
Would get paranoid and anxious to the point where I would literally throw up. I knew that I needed to stop, where like I had maybe like enough clarity or like a moment of clarity where I literally thought, this is not my grandfather's weed. You know, they say that, and I had always kind of scoffed at it, but it's true. It's so much more potent. It's so much easier to access, and I knew that I had to get distance from it, but I still wasn't able to do it. It wasn't that I wanted to kill myself or that I ever would have tried to do that. At least I hadn't gotten to that point yet. But I often thought, like, wouldn't it be great if I could just fall asleep and wake up when life is over? Which is a very passive way of not wanting to be alive anymore. And I didn't.
The most fun I've had since being sober is, honestly, it's so simple that you could laugh at it, but having a conversation with someone. Like, I haven't had a conversation with someone in so long because I've either been drunk, high, not paying attention to what they're saying, and I'm just like, yeah, I agree. I don't know what you just said, but yeah, I agree. So just having a conversation with someone, that just makes me so happy because I can physically understand what they're saying. I'm present for that conversation. And when my friends come to me with a problem, I'm actually paying attention. I actually understand what they're saying and can help them.